Hey everyone, welcome to Singularity Beast 2 build log part 8. Now there's still quite a lot to cover in this build log, so there's going to be a few videos yet, and after that I'm going to move on to upgrade videos like I did with the previous Singularity Beast. And the upgrade videos are going to go on indefinitely until I build a new system to replace this system. That's something that I thought about when I was designing this system. When I chose this case, I'm going to be upgrading into this case for a long time yet. So in this video I'm going to be talking about what I still need to do to this system, what I'm going to be probably putting in the final order because I still haven't made that order yet. I really like to, after I've built a big system like this, I like to leave it about a week. And in that week I have a play around with it, overclock, stability test, benchmark, and look at it, think about it, and if there's anything I want to change, fix, whatever, I will put that into another order about a week later. And so it's coming up on a week now, and I'm actually just preparing to make that order to get all those final bits and pieces. So that's probably going to take a few weeks to arrive because it's coming from overseas. So I'd say probably part 10 or maybe even part 11 will be looking at that order and installing all those final bits and pieces. Also in this video I need to talk about the problems that I had when I was filling the loop. So it's going to be a bit of a talking video, but I like to cover absolutely everything and not miss a thing. Okay, first of all, I'll just have to mention that you'll probably hear the system. It's a little bit loud, and that's because I don't have all the fan controllers hooked up yet. Once the fan controllers are hooked up, I'll actually back all the fans off, well, all the radiator fans off just a little bit to make them a bit quieter. So I'll probably back them off. I think they run at about 1500 RPM, so I'll take them down to about 1200, maybe 1000 RPM to make them nice and quiet. And then I'll only turn them up when I'm extreme overclocking and benching. So yeah, that's why I really need those fan controllers ASAP to give me control over the fans, because yeah, you can probably hear them. They're a little bit loud. With the side panel closed, they're not too bad. Also, while I'm on the subject of the fans, when I picked these fans, I was a bit concerned that the LEDs might be a bit too bright, and usually that wouldn't matter, but what I wanted to achieve with this build was, I'm using UV reactive tubing and coolant, and I wanted to fill the system up with UV lights and get a glow-in-the-dark effect from the tubing. It's something that I've done before successfully. Basically, with good UV lights, they won't shine on anything. You can't even see the light. The only thing that it shines on is something that's UV reactive. So, it doesn't light up the system. The system is dark, but it lights up the tubing and the coolant. So it looks like it's glowing in the dark. It looks absolutely awesome. And yeah, when I got these fans, I thought if the LEDs are too bright, well, normal light pollutes the UV light and stops it from giving, the UV reactive effect that I want. But I think that the LEDs on these fans are absolutely perfect because they basically, they just light the fans up. They don't light up the entire system. Okay, on the subject of lighting, I haven't done any of the lighting in the build yet, except for putting LEDs in the pump top here and also in the EK Supreme HF. But those were just an experiment. They're temporary. I've already talked about this. Those LEDs each run off a Molex connector, and I don't want to do that. I'm going to be running them off a bits power LED station, something that I'll put in the final order, and I'm going to be setting up a whole bunch of LEDs off the bits power LED station. They're all going to be red, so I'm going to have red LEDs here. On the EK Supreme HF, they're not going to pollute the UV effect much because they don't shine out very much. Basically, on all my water blocks that have LED spots drilled into them, I'm going to put LEDs. So unfortunately the graphics card water blocks don't, so I'm not going to bother putting them there. So here here on the memory. So I have EK RAM Dominator water blocks, nickel plexi water blocks for the memory. So I've got two, one for either side. There'll be red LEDs in those, and I've also got a nickel plexi water block ordered for the motherboard. So yeah, still a few water blocks to add into the system as well. Yeah, so that will be the lighting. Basically red LEDs, red LED radiator fans, red LEDs in all the water blocks, and UV lighting throughout the build to light up the tubing. So I will be adding, you know, you've seen the type of UV lights that I'm going to be using in the previous videos. Basically, I will add any of those lights anywhere that's necessary to get the best possible UV effect. So probably cold cathodes down the backs of the rads, like up the top there. Maybe if I can get one up behind, well, an LED strip up behind there, just whatever it takes. I've made a final decision on the fan controllers. I'm going to be using two basically very similar fan controllers to this, except the FC6 version. You can see this is the FC5, the Lamptron FC5 version. I'll be using the FC6 version because I prefer the front of them better. So I'm going to be getting two of those and splitting the channels. Basically there's 12 fans, there'll be 8 channels, you know, between the two fan controllers. So I'll be splitting the 12 fans on the radiators between those two fan controllers. So that's the final decision for the fans and the fan controllers. The other thing that I've decided on, I'm not sure if I'll do this straight away though, is I think I'm going to get 2 SSDs. I'm going to be putting them up here, you know, in this blank spot. So really you'll only be able to see them when the side panel is off, and I'll probably face them like towards that way and run the wiring through here. So there'll be like one down here, like the bottom of it starting there, so one about there and one about there. So you can just imagine them there, and I'll run a RAID 0 configuration. I'll just velcro them there because there's no holes in the case to bolt them on. So yeah, that was one of my ideas for dealing with this blank spot. The other idea was to get a decal made up to put there, like Singularity Beast 2 decal with my logo or something like that there would be good. Okay, so moving on to what I was talking about at the end of part 7, and that was the problems that I had when I was filling the loop. And you know, as I said, these problems caused me to use a smaller reservoir, so I had to swap from the 250mm to the 150mm. Change the tubing configuration here so that it didn't run to there, but it ran to the bottom of the reservoir. And I also had to remove the temperature sensor that I had just here. So I'll talk about that first. Basically, the temperature sensor that I had here, I was a little bit concerned when I installed it that it might block the loop. But it did look like there was enough room, and I thought I'd try it out. I didn't think it would be a problem. So anyway, it turns out it did block the loop, unfortunately. It didn't completely block it, but it blocked about half the flow. So I had to remove that. The other problem was the tubing routing. This was the first problem that I fixed when I was trying to fill the loop. Because basically, every time, like the first time, there was no flow. The second time there was no flow, and then the third time again. So each of these things caused there to be, well, almost no flow. So yeah, the first one was the tubing coming to here. Basically it caused the pump to blow coolant both that way and that way. So, you know, when I set this up, I was a bit worried about it, but I really liked how clean it was. It was a really clean, nice looking configuration. If you remember from the previous videos when I had the tubing coming to here, the reservoir in the top, it really looked great. So I thought I'd take the risk. You know, I was worried that it might not work, but I thought I'd take the risk, try it out, because I liked the way it looked. Anyway, it turns out it didn't work. Yeah, and you can keep that in mind for future reference, guys. Basically, the inlet, you can only have one inlet, you can't have two. If you have two, the pump actually loses pressure and it blows the coolant both ways. So yeah, down this tube and that way. When I fixed that problem and brought the, you know, this tube up to the bottom of this reservoir, I had to lift this reservoir up, and that meant that the reservoir was just about touching these fans up here, you know, with the bigger reservoir, which means I couldn't fill it. So that was one reason why I had to use a shorter reservoir. There's actually a couple of others as well. One of them being that, I mean, first of all, I don't like unnecessarily big reservoirs. I thought it might look nice in this system because there's so much room in the case, but you know, when I filled it up in the end, I didn't like it that much anyway. So yep, that was another reason. And the third and final reason was because the bigger the reservoir, the more pressure it's going to put on these fittings down here and on the thread that goes into the pump top. Because you can imagine, you know, the higher it is, the more leverage it has on the, you know, the thread into the reservoir, into the pump top, and the fittings down here. So to avoid wobble, because that other reservoir, by the time it was full, you know, way up here, it only took a little bit of movement of the system. I mean, I should have bolted in properly, you know, with a bracket on it and everything like that. But yeah, that's another matter. You know, having a bracket like way out there would mean a bit of an unusual, messy configuration. So this is a config that I've done quite a few times, having the reservoir sticking up like that, you know, just being held up by the tubing and the fittings. It's a clean way of doing things. And with this smaller reservoir, you know, it doesn't move around that much because it doesn't have as much leverage on the fittings underneath. Oh yeah, that was the other problem. If you remember, I actually took the top off another reservoir, and the top looks like that. I mean, you can turn these things up either way, but I'll just call it the top. It has a single central opening, and I actually put it on the bottom of when I was running the larger reservoir, and this was to make sure that the reservoir was central. So I had, you know, one central opening, a fitting in the center, connecting it straight to this dual pump top here. So that's how I had it mounted. But when I needed to connect this tube up to the bottom of the reservoir, obviously one central fitting wasn't enough, so I needed to use the default one again, which has 3 openings, and that meant that the reservoir was offset. And you know, when you're doing it up, you don't know where the offset is going to end up. So I had to connect the reservoir to the pump top using a fitting with an offset. So I use this 90-degree dual rotary fitting. That gives me not only 360-degree rotation, but also the ability to put the offset wherever I want it. So this is a little bit hard to explain, but yeah, hopefully most of you guys can understand what I'm talking about. It also gives me the ability to tilt the reservoir side to side, which I needed to do because this dual pump top is not actually sitting vertically properly. So this tube is slightly too long. So yeah, now I can tilt the reservoir wherever I want it as well. So anyway, the final configuration that I ended up using here is a 90-degree dual rotary here, 25 or actually 15mm extension fitting just there, and over there a 90-degree dual rotary fitting straight into the pump top. So that was it. Put a stopper there. Had to move the temp sensor out. I don't actually have a temp sensor in the system at all now. I was really rushing with this. I mean, what I could have done to allow for the not enough space there is just put an extension fitting up and put the temp sensor into the extension fitting. So that is something that I'll be doing when I, you know, put the motherboard and memory water blocks on. I'll be, yeah, if you put an extension fitting up, you can just put the temp sensor straight into the extension fitting. Okay, I actually had a comment about this, so I thought I'd explain it. Most people, when they fill a water cooling loop, they connect the system up so that just the pumps run, so that you don't actually start the system from the power button. Basically, you short out the power supply. You can get a special power supply shorter that you plug into the 24-pin Molex, or there's other ways of doing it. But basically, you unplug everything and just plug in the pump. Or you know, you can leave the fans and some of the other things running. But anyway, yeah, if you just run the pump, you can fill up the water cooling loop on its own without actually, you know, booting, without running the hardware. And this means that if you get a leak, then you don't short out any of your components. You can just clean it all up, fix everything, and you're safe. But, you know, because I've built so many water cooling systems now, I've had that much experience, I haven't had any leaks. You know, it's given me enough confidence to fill a loop and boot the system at the same time. So basically I have to prevent the system from booting, so I just make sure it only gets to post or into the BIOS while I'm filling the loop, and you only actually have to switch it on and off a couple of times anyway. You know, once the circulation is happening, the reservoir is full, sometimes you can even fill the reservoir fast enough to get it going from the first run. You don't even have to switch the system on and off. You can just hit the power button with the reservoir full, with your syringe full, and just keep filling up the reservoir as fast as you can, and away it goes. But with a big system like this, it has to fill up all those rads and all that tubing and, you know, all those water blocks. You have to switch it on and off. I think I switched it on and off about 3 times, so not too bad. It just gets to post or gets into the BIOS and off it goes. So that's how I do things now. Okay, about the dust filters. So the reason I chose these dust filters is because of purely how effective they are. They have a really fine mesh, so they catch almost all of the dust, and they can be used in a bunch of different applications because of the strips, the magnetic strips that you stick down first. But the problem with them is they really take from the aesthetics of the case. I've had a few comments about this, and personally I really don't like the way they look either. They really ruin the look of the case, mainly in an extreme build like this. So I am definitely going to be replacing these dust filters and removing them from the build, and I've actually already found something to replace them. You won't be seeing them for a couple of weeks until the final order gets here, but they're a Phobia 2-piece 120mm dust filter, and I chose a 2-piece dust filter. That's really what I always wanted, because I want the ability to be able to remove the dust filter without having to undo any screws and, you know, wash it and clean it, because that's the real problem with the Silverstone dust filters that I've used underneath here. You can just see them there. You can see they're a 1-piece dust filter, and they're screwed on using the same screws that actually mounts the rad to the bottom of the case. So if you're going to pull those dust filters off, basically, you know, the radiator comes off as well. I mean, you can do them one at a time, but it's a lot of hassle. Like, I've got to turn the case on its side to get to those. So I'll be replacing all the dust filters on this case, including those Silverstone ones, with Phobia dust filters. And the cool thing is, for those of you who don't know, this front panel and also the top panel of the case is removable. Both of these panels are removable, and you would have seen, you know, if you've seen the other videos, that underneath I can actually mount the dust filters, yeah, underneath these panels here. So basically you won't even be able to see the dust filters, or you'll just be able to see them through this grill here. So, you know, this will be completely removed. You can see that fan there. Well, that fan will have one of these Phobia dust filters in front of it. So, you know, I will get a bit of dust on the outside here, but that can just be vacuumed off really easily. And then to get to the dust filters to clean them, I've actually got to, you know, remove the front panel, remove the top panel, and then I can pull the 2-piece dust filters apart, and basically they have foam in the middle, and foam catches absolutely everything. Like, it's probably even going to be even better than these dust filters. So that way I'll be able to, you know, remove all these. The aesthetics of the case will be unaffected because, yeah, the dust filters will be hidden. And, you know, it's the perfect situation. I'm really stoked with the idea, and I can't wait to get my hands on these dust filters and get them installed, because it's going to look great and it's going to be very functional as well and practical. But in the meantime, I'm going to keep these on here temporarily because I don't want any dust in the build. You can see that I actually cleaned them 48 hours ago and they've already got dust on them. So okay, I was going to give you another look at the cable management, but because of how big the case is, I can't actually turn it around on my desk to give you a proper look at it. So what I'm going to do is give you a complete look again around the build once I've actually finished it off when the final order arrives. So yeah, I'll turn the case right around then and give you a proper look at the cable management once it's actually finished. But for now, I mean, I've actually showed you all of this. The only changes that have happened is, well, this is the temperature probe that was in the loop. That's going to go back in again once I install the motherboard and memory water blocks. As I said, I'm going to put it into an extension fitting, so that's just that staying there for now. And you can see the pumps are connected up just here. So other than those two things, nothing has changed since I last showed you the cable management. So yeah, lots of cleaning up still to be done back here. I am very happy with how I got it, but yeah, a few things still to be cleaned up. Okay, that's about it for part 8. I know it's been a big talking video, but that's just the way I do things. I like to be thorough and bring you as much information as I can. Part 9 will be the beginning of the testing, overclocking, performance and temperature results. It will probably take me a couple of videos to cover all of that because yeah, there's a lot for me to go through. What I'm going to be doing is doing all the tests at stock clocks and then overclocking the system and doing all the tests again. And then I'll be doing a lot of game benchmarks as well, triple screens, single screen, etc. And yeah, I'd like to cover a lot of the overclocking as well, and also some of the features in action of the Rampage 4 Extreme. But I'm not sure if I'm going to put that in the build log or if I'm going to put it in separate videos. So yeah, I haven't really decided that yet because what I want to look at is the OC key, the overlay that it brings up on the screen. At the moment I'm still figuring out whether it works with triple screens or not. But anyway, that sums up part 8. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like and favourite if you want to see more. Thanks everyone.